in thinking about this fifth trauma-informed principle, voice, choice, and empowerment, I want to reflect on how we can embody this specifically in psychodrama practice. So, psychodrama is unique as an approach in that it really empowers participants to reclaim control of their life through role playing, and the surplus reality of the process is inherently empowering in that it makes the impossible possible. Through psychodrama and role playing, we enter into a different dimension where we can experience anything, even things that are impossible in real life. And this can be really empowering for clients and even for trainees in training. I know for myself, in my own experience doing psychodrama as a participant and as a trainee, there were a number of psychodramas I participated in as the protagonist where there was something I was craving to experience either for my own healing or my own exploration or my own growth that would have been impossible or unlikely in real life. But through the surplus reality of psychodrama, it all becomes possible. And I can have an embodied experience of the thing that I crave to experience, or a dream or a vision that I have, which is quite empowering. Psychodrama philosophy has this belief in what we call the autonomous healing center within. And this comes from Zerka and Jacob Moreno, the founders of psychodrama. They argue that the primary purpose of our methods and the primary purpose of the psychodramatist is to help the protagonist and the group to tap into the autonomous healing center within their self, and that this is deep within the self, usually untouched by words. And we're simply guides helping the client remove barriers to accessing self-healing, to accessing all the good adaptive information and knowledge and wisdom and strengths and resources that already exist within them. So psychodrama philosophy is inherently empowering in this way. There's a classical psychodrama motto that says, "Follow the protagonist," which is really promoting empowerment in psychodrama, in that we're approaching the protagonist as the expert in their experience and as the center of the group, representing the group. And the psychodrama becomes focused on them rather than on the facilitator's perception of what's going on. So this is inherently empowering. I've also suggested that the motto of "follow the protagonist" might be inherently limiting at times when we're doing trauma-focused psychodrama, and that it can get us into some trouble, especially if we have trauma survivors that we're working with who might struggle with containment or reenacting or re-experiencing trauma and diving into the trauma too quick, too soon, than for what is safe for them and for the rest of the group. So as psychodramatists, we have a responsibility to also provide structure and containment for the process and to keep the psychodrama safe. So I've been borrowing some language from another approach, dynamic developmental psychotherapy, and offering a new psychodrama motto: follow, lead, follow the protagonist. That, of course, we need to follow the protagonist and enter their subjective reality, but we also have a responsibility to lead the protagonist, to provide structure and containment and boundaries and keep the process safe, while also following the protagonist in what's important and what's right for them. So this paradigm really centers the client and the group as the expert in their experience, while promoting empowerment, voice, and choice. But it also articulates the psychodrama director's responsibility to lead the process, that we're not completely passive, that we also have to be active in our leadership. Sociometry within psychodrama, or by itself, is also inherently empowering and exploring voice and choice. Sociometry is really a democratic process that elevates individual choices within the group in a collective way, and elevates the individual voices within the group in a collective way. So using sociometry is a really direct and streamlined way to promote individual and group empowerment. Psychodrama elevates the voice of the group and the protagonist in each phase of the group process. In the warm-up, which is usually where we're using sociometry, in the action, if it's a psychodrama group, in the action we're doing psychodrama, and in the sharing process of the group, where each person gets the opportunity to speak up and to share how they were impacted by the psychodrama now that it's over. There's other interventions within psychodrama that really help cultivate voice, choice, and empowerment, one of which is doubling. So doubling is when we come and stand next to the protagonist and we offer a statement, something that we feel like is unspoken for the protagonist, something that would deepen the experience or label something meaningful that's going on for them. And the protagonist has the option to repeat what was said in their own words or to change it to something that is true for them. So doubling is especially empowering in that it's really promoting and role training a sense of voice, helping people use their voice to label what their experience is. Role training is another intervention that we can use, which helps with empowerment, voice, and choice. Now, role training would be where we're using some sort of future projection scene, something that we expect, a scene we expect to find ourselves in the future, or expect the clients to find themselves in the future. And we give them the opportunity to rehearse and to practice, to train in the role, so that when they go out into their lives and are faced with this situation, they already have some practice experientially responding. So this is role training, which can be particularly empowering. In client groups, this might look like practicing boundary setting with family members, and we might rehearse and practice setting boundaries with family members. In a professional setting or training groups, I often will use role training also around boundary setting. I find as professionals, we often need just as much practice with boundary setting as our clients, but also around having difficult conversations with clients, managing conflict with clients or colleagues, or asking for a raise to our supervisor, or negotiating a contract with an organizational leader. So lots of different ways that role training can be used for empowerment in client groups and in training groups or organizational settings. I find while I'm directing a psychodrama, that it's particularly helpful to remind the protagonist that they have control over this process, that if there's anything that doesn't fit for them, they can just let me know and we can change things up. If it feels like we're going too fast or too slow or a different direction than they want to go, I tell them to let me know. You have full control over this process. We're going to co-direct this psychodrama together. And then I like to remind the group about their choice to participate or not, that even if they get invited to play a role, they can respectfully decline the role if they really just want to observe. And then throughout the actual psychodrama, I like to give the protagonist as many choices as possible. Instead of being an authoritarian director and telling them this is what we're doing next, and then we're doing this, and now we're going to do this, I like to offer them options within a structure. I might say, first we need to bring some strengths and support to help us. So I'm being directive in that way. But then I'll say, which strength could help you? Which strength would you need? Pick a strength that you feel like you really need to accomplish our goal today. Or when we get to the climax of a psychodrama, right before it, I might offer multiple options for how we could interface with the issue, the trauma, and work towards the contract and the goal. Here's one option. We could have a conversation with the person who hurt you. If that feels like it's too much, another option is we could have a conversation with the part of you that was hurt, your inner child or yourself as a child, perhaps. If that doesn't feel right for you, we could have a conversation with you in the future, having healed from this trauma. We could have a conversation with your higher power, with God. We could have a conversation with the negative voices within your head that resulted from this trauma. We could have a conversation with shame that you said you've been struggling with because of the trauma. I'd like to offer multiple options, especially when we get to an antagonist role or a trauma-based role or a more intense and difficult role, to give the protagonist some choice. I find that there's multiple different ways of reaching the same contract, the same goal in a psychodrama, and that if we're creative enough to be able to see multiple options, we can offer the protagonist multiple options, which is inherently empowering. Of course, we can offer multiple options and make a recommendation. I might say, here's three different options that we could engage in next. The one that I think would be most helpful is this particular one. But you tell me which one feels like it would be most helpful for you. So rather than being authoritarian in our directing, it really helps to be checking in, be getting permission and consent throughout the process, asking how the protagonist is doing, and offering choices. So again, this is the fifth of the 6 trauma-informed principles: voice, choice, and empowerment. And like I mentioned earlier, we can't fully embody voice, choice, and empowerment in our organizations, in our groups, and in psychodrama if we're not also embodying the other 5 trauma-informed principles. So I really encourage you to take some time and reflect not only on this trauma-informed principle, but also on the other 5 trauma-informed principles. They really go hand in hand. If you wanted to learn more about those, I encourage you to check out the other videos on this channel. If you'd like to be notified when future videos are published on the channel, you could subscribe to our channel. If you found this helpful, it would really help if you liked the video, shared it with your friends or colleagues, and leave a comment in the chat. Tell us what was helpful about this video. What are the ways that you empower the folks that you're working with, clients or colleagues or staff members? How are the ways that you centralize voice and choice in your work as a trauma-informed professional and leader?